Here, get the out of the country. This is Jewish country only. We don't need Muslims here.
As Rapture is arriving soon and so close, some end-time prophecies are being fulfilled worldwide. Among other nations, one is Israel, where some unusual events are happening in this sacred land. So, let's explore these strange signs and how terrifying they are in this eye-opening video. The first sign appears to be the reconstruction of the Third Temple. The Third Temple is a special holy place people want to build in Jerusalem. It's supposed to be even more important than the old temples that were destroyed. Even though it hasn't been built yet, it's very important in Judaism, especially for Orthodox Jews. They believe it's the most sacred place for them to worship. The Hebrew Bible says that the prophets wanted this new temple to be built when the Messiah came. Some Christians also think it's important for the end of the world. But there's a problem. The place where they want to build the Third Temple is also where Muslims have a special building called the Dome of the Rock. So there's a big argument about it. The Temple Mount has caused many problems between Israelis and Palestinians. They argue about who should control it. Even though many countries don't agree with Israel about Jerusalem being their capital, they're still trying to build the Third Temple. But it's not easy because of all the arguments. Jewish people can't worship there freely, and some Muslim people, especially women in black clothes, stay there to keep Jewish tourists away. Muslim leaders say there was never a temple there, which makes the situation even more complicated. Moreover, the more terrifying thing is that a special ceremony for the Third Temple happened on October 12th. In this ceremony, they reenacted an ancient tradition with water. Many people joined in, including priests called Kohanim, who wore special clothes, and Levites, who played musical instruments. They all started at Shahar Hashpot in the old city of Jerusalem. Together they walked along old paths to get to Shiloh, which is also known as Siloam Springs. This place was used during the time of the temple. As they walked, they chanted, danced, and played silver trumpets at different stops. Important rabbis were there too. At Shiloh, they used a golden jug to collect water, and then they went back to the top of the mountain. They set up a model altar and special tools, and decorated them with big leafy branches like they used to do in the ancient temple. The ceremony ended with a special blessing from the priests and the Hakhel ceremony, which happens every 7 years. Even though the Torah, which is a holy book, doesn't say they have to do this water ceremony, it's part of a tradition that comes from what Moses taught orally. People see it as a happy holiday. In the temple, this ceremony would last for 15 hours, and they would keep celebrating all night until the next morning when the temple service started again. People from different countries participated in the Sukkot celebrations, making it an international day of worship. They did this water ceremony for the last 6 days of the Sukkot holiday and poured wine during the morning service. The Kohanim filled a flask with spring water and went from the temple to the Shiloh spring at the bottom of Mount Moriah. Then, 2 Kohanim went up to the stone altar in the temple's inner courtyard and poured wine and water into special holes made just for this ceremony. Besides the reconstruction of the Third Temple, some recent evidence of an ancient temple was found. New research has found evidence supporting the idea of an old temple being where the Temple Mount is now. This site is very important to Jewish and Muslim people. Some researchers discovered a special place used by Jewish people for religious cleaning under the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Muslims believe that this mosque was built by Abraham a long time ago. This finding is important because it goes against the idea that there was never a Jewish temple there. In the past, a British archaeologist named Robert Hamilton looked at the mosque's foundations after it fell down in 1927 because of an earthquake. He found something interesting. He found a Jewish pool called a mikveh under the mosque's floor. Jewish people used this pool when the Second Temple existed for special cleansing before they went to the Temple Mount. These new discoveries, which were hidden in old British records, show that there was an old temple at the Temple Mount, a holy place for Jewish people. Now comes the scary trumpet sounds in the sky in Israel. In the middle part of Israel, some strange and powerful sounds echoed, confusing many people. Even the army and police couldn't figure out why it was happening. People started talking about it on social media. They said they felt really loud booms and strong vibrations in places like Gush Dan, Tel Aviv, and Petah Tikva. The sounds even reached a place called Julis, which is 50 kilometers away from where it started. The Israel police and the army were puzzled and couldn't give a clear answer about what was causing these explosions. This strange sound phenomenon isn't just happening in Israel. Similar weird sounds, often called sky trumpets or skyquakes, have recently been reported in different parts of the world. People from countries like the United States, Canada, Costa Rica, Russia, the Czech Republic, and Australia have talked about hearing low-frequency hums and noises like trumpets or horns coming from the sky or deep underground. What's really strange about these sounds is that they're new and unusual. Most people have never heard anything like them, making them even more mysterious. They have a spooky quality, like groaning noises and metallic vibrations that sound like musical instruments. Some people even say they hear unclear voices mixed in with these strange sounds. So, could these sounds mean something important? Are they a sign of the end of the world or something like that? Some people think about biblical stories that talk about trumpets, and based on those stories, it is predicted that these sounds define the end of the world as near. Also, in a book called Revelation, there are stories about 7 trumpets. Each of these trumpets is blown by an angel, and they signal really big and scary events that were shown to a person named John of Patmos in his dreams. In these stories, the trumpets come after the opening of a special seal, and it's a big deal because this seal holds important information from a powerful figure. These trumpets were called salpinx in Greek, and they look different from the trumpets we have today. They were made of bronze and had a narrow, straight shape, with mouthpieces made of bone and bells. They were not like modern trumpets. The last 3 trumpets are called the woe trumpets, and they're really important because they announce some very distressing things that happen in the stories. These trumpet sounds have a deep meaning in the stories, and they make the events in the book of Revelation even more significant. Presence of red heifer in Israel. A long time ago, God told Moses and Aaron to get a special red cow in the book of Numbers. This cow had to be perfect with no blemishes, never pregnant, and never used for work. They would use this cow for a special ceremony to make people clean again if they touched a dead body. Here's how it worked. They would burn the cow and mix its ashes with water. If someone became unclean by touching a dead body, they would sprinkle this special water with ashes on them twice. Once 3 days after touching the body, and again 7 days later. The Torah also tells us that a long time ago, they brought a red heifer to a priest named Eleazar, Aaron's son, and used it to make the ashes for this ceremony. They used those ashes until the first temple period ended. During the second temple time, they burned 5 to 7 more red heifers for their ashes. Maimonides, a famous Jewish scholar, said the next red heifer would come with the Messiah. Recently, 5 red heifers arrived in Israel from Texas. These heifers are less than a year old, and if they stay completely red without any blemishes, they can be used to make the special ashes needed by Jewish law to purify people who touched dead bodies. This purification is important so that priests, Kohanim, can do their work in a future temple. The heifers are now in quarantine in Haifa, Israel for at least 7 days, following the rules of the Israel Veterinary Authority. After that, they'll be sent to 2 different places in Israel, and one will eventually be open to the public. These heifers will be taken care of until they are 3 years old, and then they can be turned into ashes. The Bone Israel organization, which includes Jews and Christians, helped find and bring these heifers to Israel, and when they arrived in Israel, people got terrified as yet another end-time prophecy was fulfilled. So what do you think of the strange rapture signs that happened in Israel? The third temple, a sacred place in Jerusalem, holds immense significance for many people. It's considered even more special than the old temples that no longer exist. Although it hasn't been built yet, the anticipation is growing. For Orthodox Jews, it's not just a physical structure, it's a symbol of holiness and a place of worship. Since 1987, the temple movement has been gearing up to build the third temple. Despite the modern era's secularism, Orthodox Jews are deeply committed to this cause. They've re-established the Sanhedrin, a religious committee overseeing the temple's regulations. Their aim is to rebuild the temple according to religious standards. For Orthodox Jews, rebuilding the temple is crucial to improving the world. They believe that the world can only improve once the temple is reconstructed. Not only this, the return of Israel to the Promised Land and the construction of the Third Temple align with biblical prophecies. Prophets like Ezekiel and Isaiah foretold these events, emphasizing God's promise to restore his people. Then the nations will know that I, the Lord, make Israel holy when my sanctuary is among them forever. God's plan always included bringing the Jewish people back to the land on his terms. After centuries of global exile, this return fulfilled prophecies of gathering from the east, west, north, and south. I will say to the north, give them up, and to the south, do not hold them back. Bring my sons from afar, and my daughters from the ends of the earth. You might wonder why built the third temple when Yeshua serves in the true tabernacle in heaven. The Holy Temple is not just a physical structure, it's a dwelling place for the divine presence of God. Let them construct a sanctuary for me, that I may dwell among them. The prophet Ezekiel witnessed the departure of this divine presence from the temple, but also saw the rebuilding of an eternal dwelling place of God in Jerusalem. This is the place of my throne, and the place for the soles of my feet. This is where I will live among the Israelites forever. Rambam, a medieval Jewish philosopher, emphasized the temple's eternal significance. According to this perspective, the Third Temple is not just a historical reconstruction, but a symbol of God's eternal presence among his people. During the Third Temple reconstruction, an ancient temple was discovered beneath the Temple Mount. In 1927, an earthquake damaged the Al-Aqsa Mosque, leading to investigations by archaeologist Robert Hamilton and Muslim clerics. They found secrets hidden where the mosque had collapsed. Years later, Israeli archaeologists Dr. Gabi Barkai and Zachi Dvira revisited these discoveries. They dug through tons of earth from the Temple Mount and found surprising artifacts. These findings, like a Jewish mikveh from the Second Temple time and a Byzantine mosaic under the mosque, changed what people knew about Jerusalem's history. The discoveries suggest a more diverse history at the Temple Mount, possibly including structures like churches from the Byzantine era. And then there was the arrival of red heifers. 5 red heifers arrived in Israel from a Texas ranch, sparking lots of interest among those who believe in the prophecy of building the Third Temple in Jerusalem. This is seen as a fulfillment of prophecy. These young heifers are under a year old, and if they stay entirely red without any flaws, they can be used to make ashes. These ashes are crucial in Jewish law to purify those who've been near a dead body, especially for the priests who will work in the future temple. Upon arrival, the special heifers went to Haifa for a 7-day quarantine following Israeli veterinary authority rules. After that, they'll move to 2 places in Israel, one of which will be open to the public. They'll be cared for until they reach 3 years old, when they can be sacrificed, and their ashes made following Jewish law. An organization called Bonei Israel, made up of Jews and Christians, played a significant role in bringing these heifers to Israel. Byron Stinson, a Texas rancher and advisor for the organization, raised these cattle. At Ben Gurion Airport, a welcome ceremony attended by Temple Institute officials and other important people marked their arrival. The red heifer holds deep meaning in the Bible. Its ashes were used to purify the Israelites from uncleanness, as written in Numbers 19. These ashes were essential for purification rituals in the temple. So, many see the appearance of a red heifer today as a sign of the Third Temple's construction and Christ's return. According to tradition, there have been 9 red heifers sacrificed since Moses' time, but none since the Second Temple's destruction. Rabbi Maimonides taught that the Messiah himself would sacrifice the 10th red heifer. The arrival of these 5 perfect red heifers from Texas to Israel on September 15, 2022, is seen by many as a fulfillment of prophecy and a significant step toward building a new temple. The rules for a red heifer are strict under the Mosaic law. It must be without defect or blemish and never worn a yoke, Numbers chapter 19, verse 2. The process of sacrificing a red heifer involved unique rituals, including using a female animal, sacrificing away from the entrance, and the specified color of the animal. This whole process foreshadowed the sacrifice of Christ. Jesus, like the red heifer, was without blemish. Similar to the red heifer sacrifice outside the camp, Jesus was crucified outside Jerusalem. Just as the red heifer's ashes purified from death's contamination, Jesus' sacrifice cleanses from the penalty and corruption of sin and death. Recently, the construction went to another level when the ceremony for the third temple happened. On October 12th, an ancient water ceremony took place at an old temple in Jerusalem, drawing a big crowd. The ceremony began at Shahar Hashpat in the city's old quarter, led by priests and musicians. The excited crowd followed the priests through historic routes to Shiloh, also known as Siloam Springs, a crucial site during the temple's time. During the procession, people chanted and danced, and silver trumpets echoed at each stop, with respected rabbis overseeing the event. At Shiloh, a golden jug collected water, and the procession returned to the mountain's summit. Following ancient temple customs, they set up a model altar with utensils and leafy branches. The ceremony ended with blessings and a special event called Hakhel, which happens once every 7 years. Though not directly mandated by the Torah, the water libation holds a special place in Moses' oral tradition and is celebrated joyfully. The original temple ceremony lasted 15 hours, and the festivities continued into the night until the temple service resumed. People worldwide gathered to participate in the Sukkot celebrations, turning it into an international day of worship. During the last 6 days of Sukkot, the water libation coincided with pouring wine during the morning service. Priests filled a flask with spring water and journeyed from the temple to the Shiloh spring at the base of Mount Moriah. In the temple's inner courtyard, 2 priests poured wine and water into designated holes on the stone altar, preserving a tradition of significant historical and religious importance. After the ceremony recently, a marriage also took place in Temple Mount. In Jeremiah chapter 33, verse 11, a prophecy talks about a happy time with the voice of joy and the voice of gladness, indicating the joy linked with the arrival of a future Messiah and the third temple. This prophecy has sparked a trend in Israel, where Jewish individuals visit the revered Temple Mount, seeing it as a sign of the Messiah's coming. A couple from Rehovo and Tel Mond, Eitan Krantman and Coral Daisy Dean, recently got engaged on the Temple Mount, showcasing a practice becoming popular among Jewish couples. They combined the 2 parts of a traditional Jewish marriage, kiddushin, betrothal, and nisuin, wedding ceremony, under the chuppah. This emphasized the belief in humanity's creation in God's image and the formation of an everlasting union. This significant moment on the Temple Mount is connected to a verse from Jeremiah, often recited at weddings, predicting a time of joy and thanksgiving in the land. The Temple Mount features historical gates for bridegrooms and mourners, known as the Gate of Mercy. As more Jewish couples choose the Temple Mount for their engagements, they see it as the fulfillment of ancient prophecies like Zechariah chapter 8 verses 20 to 22, which mentions people from different cities coming to Jerusalem to pray to the Lord. These events are seen as awe-inspiring and in line with biblical prophecies. And finally, the Battle of Armageddon. Armageddon, as talked about in Revelation chapter 16, verse 16, isn't just a big battle, but represents a global rebellion against God's rule. It's like a gathering point for armies challenging divine authority, not in one specific location, showing the power of a higher authority. These events often impact nations that have moved away from moral values, similar to recent global disasters such as landslides, diseases, wildfires, and lightning. Armageddon is seen as a powerful force, making people and societies reconsider their choices. While linked to destruction, it encourages reflection, change, and return to important values. In our changing world, these ideas connect ancient prophecies, history, and today's events, prompting us to seek understanding and unity in the face of challenges. So, what do you think of these terrifying rapture signs in Israel? Comment below and subscribe for more.